It says to use the square root property to solve the equation. And this one's a little messier looking than some of the ones we've seen before, but it's still a good candidate for the square root property because what we have is some quantity squared. So the left side, everything on the left side is being squared, and you have a constant over here. When you see that, that's a good time to use the square root property, which remember says that you solve that by just taking the square root of both sides. So if we take the square root of the left side, we get 5 minus 2x is equal to, and the square root of the right side is going to give us plus or minus the square root of 26. That's not a perfect square, so we're stuck with the radical. And we can't even simplify the radical. There are no perfect squares hiding inside of 26, right? 26 is 13 times 2, so 13 is not a perfect square, and certainly neither is 2. So we can't do any more with that radical. But we can isolate x, and we do that by subtracting 5 from both sides first off. So we get negative 2x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 26. And now we want to isolate the x by dividing both sides by 2, or rather negative 2, because I'm trying to get rid of a negative 2. So we have x is equal to negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 26 over 2, which remember now that's the two separate answers. One answer is x is negative 5 plus the square root of 26 over a negative 2. The other one is negative 5 minus the square root of 26 over a negative 2. And that's essentially the answer, but a lot of times when we have a fraction, we don't like a negative in the denominator, and we can fix that if we multiply both of these fractions. Take this one first. Negative 5 times negative 5 plus the square root of 26 over negative 2. If we just multiply the top and bottom of this fraction by a negative 1, you may think it's a sneaky little trick, but what happens is negative 1 times a negative 2 in the denominator gives me a positive 2 down there. And I multiply the top by a negative 1. Well, the negative 1 carries through the parentheses, makes this a positive 5 minus the square root of 26. So this is the same as this. It's just a little cleaner. And we do the same thing with this one. If we multiply the top and bottom of this fraction by a negative 1, well, the bottom's going to become a positive 2. And the top, well, same thing's going to happen. When this will turn into a 5 plus the square root of 26. So notice we still have our plus and our minus, but we don't have any negatives in the denominator. So that's the solution.